And everybody talks about you. And they're like, wow, how does Yat do it? How is he always in such a good mood? How does he have time for everybody? How is he always here doing all these things? I mean, it's, I say it and everybody says it. So it's noticed, and obviously it's backed up by your team. And we've had Robbie on the show as well. You're an incredible CEO, and I know a bunch of other members of your team, and they all have that transformational mission energy,
Right.
and that's a beautiful place to work. And you're right, you are lucky to have that, because some people don't. Do you think the fight for digital property rights is the most important fight of the human species?
I would definitely consider it as foundational. Because if you don't have property rights, you can't have freedom. And that is the part that I think is just maybe hard for some people to explain if they don't get it. But once you dig deeper into it, once you not just go into the philosophy, but into actuals, really at root, what property rights does also is it decentralizes power. It gives power to the individual so they can keep the other side in check, right? It's an accountability framework. That's the democratic framework, right? And what we see with DAOs, for instance, is fascinating, because with DAOs, we're now able to elect or do votes on a weekly basis. Eventually, you can do this on a daily basis, perhaps, even if it makes sense. Collective decision-making at scale. The reason why physical democratic systems can't work this way is because you need paperwork. I need to prove, are you Brian that's coming in and signing on and making that vote? I have to verify. That framework is expensive to prove, because otherwise someone can just hire a bunch of people to come in and pretend they're people that don't exist, for instance, right? So you need that. On-chain will solve for a lot of that. So it means that I actually think Web3 and blockchain will create a much more democratic society over time as we begin to understand and respect that particular process. So I think it's absolutely foundational, because then that's the way in which you can defend your property rights, because it's now held in a democratic framework. In the same way that if I mint something on Ethereum, I can't just take it away. I need the consensus of the network to say, maybe that shouldn't be yours, right? How do I obtain that consensus? Right? I have to convince, I have to explain, I have to do all that kind of stuff. And if it turns out, not to work, then, there's a form of justice that just took place that is upheld by the community rather than necessarily just by sort of a handful of people. If we don't solve for property rights in law, for instance, not just in technology, I think what blockchain does is it provides a way in which provenance can be secured. So now we have the framework in which we can actually say, this is yours. Just in the same way that if someone stole your Bitcoin, now in law, people will say, you have to return that. It's stolen Bitcoin. We acknowledge its property. So what's the next step? The broader data framework, not just NFTs, but the broader data framework has to become a property right. So we're inching towards that way. And when we get to that point, I think it redraws everything, because then AI companies have to basically say where they got their property from. The AI company will say, I can't track all this data, or I can't know where it is because it just picked it up on the web. Well, now on-chain, I know exactly where you picked it up from, and I can start sort of audit that in an automatic transactional manner. One of the big things about blockchain is that the audit trail and the ability to do this in real time is part of its magic. Whereas right now, it's a private database, which frankly you can fudge. So I don't know what's happening in this database, and it's all messy. And by the time a third-party person comes in, they don't even know what was created out of that. Again, I think something that is effectively a public database that is for public review and public audit, which basically blockchain is, will solve that.
Yeah, I think it probably is the most important fight for humanity.
Yes.
And if you look back over the last couple hundred years and count up the hundreds of millions of deaths in this world, like how many of those could have been prevented if there were property rights, if there was transparency, if there was lack of information asymmetry, as Gary would say, if there was all of that, you could probably stack up many of those would have been saved. So it's important. I'm in the process right now of finishing I think it's our 6th feature-length documentary film that chronicles about 28 days in 2020 when I was being censored by YouTube. And it's called We Will Not Be Silenced. And it kind of goes through my whole process of from bewilderment to anger to fighting back to peace, of basically being forced to create my own community, create my own digital platform to get communications out to the people. It's actually a Web3 ad in disguise, if I really think about it. And it's interesting because I have to watch my old vlog videos. And I was in the old studio that you were in, and I was walking around these roundabouts, sometimes the only person on the street, recording these vlogs and talking about how I felt. But I felt energy coming back to me too at that time, because even though I was pretty much all alone, I felt like I was doing something important, and I felt like a lot of people wanted me to do it.
Yes.
So there is something about that energy that maybe the freshmen at MIT would disagree that even exists. But now that I'm a little older, I'm like, there's something about it.
There's absolutely something about it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's powerful. And I just say for anybody out there, if you're on the right mission, that will come your way, and it'll make you look as young as Yat Siu.
Thank you so much.
And as fresh as this man here. So, so look, this is incredible. Thank you for the time. Thank you for these conversations.
Thank you for having me.
I implore anybody, if they don't really understand digital property rights, just to go deeper and just to think, well, why can something digital change the world or be the most important fight? But if you really understand that, you'll understand what we're talking about, and maybe understand what the future is all about. So,
maybe a closing thought, particularly, not to say that you need to follow this model, but I do think that some of the highlights of the American Constitution is actually very, very informative. We don't study this, for instance, in Europe, for instance, right? When I grew up, we didn't study the American Constitution. Well, we didn't study the French Revolution, but we generally didn't really sort of go deeper in that. And I think the American Constitution is a very interesting sort of work, because America is perhaps the only country in the world that treasures the Constitution in an almost religious manner. Like, it's something you don't change. And it has maintained the country the way it is, the framework that it is. And that is powerful, because think of how old the Constitution is. Yes, there's been some amendments, but how old the principles of the Constitution is, and it still works today. So I think there's something human about this. There's something that we crave for, that it has identified in whichever imperfect ways, and tries to translate that. And the framework of property rights is what America is built on. I mean, you can say maybe you should read, Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith, maybe you don't understand John Locke. That's a bit too academic, almost. Like, I wouldn't, unless you're into that, you may not go there. But the Constitution, I think, is a good parallel. You just watch a YouTube video about the framework of what makes the Constitution work, and I think it'll click for most people.
Freedom of speech, and right to happiness, and all of these things.
I think possibly maybe the pursuit of happiness, the right to happiness, is perhaps only present possibly in the American Constitution.
I think it is. Yeah. I agree. And again, it's almost a reaction to everything that was happening in this country and in Europe that was almost the opposite of that. So you see it through those eyes. And one thing I noticed when you were talking about property rights is property rights are so important, but also the confidence of your future property rights
it's foundational.
It's like the net present value of your property rights.
Because if you can't have the ownership of it, then you can't predict the future for it. And that's, I think, perhaps the nature of what used to and may still be American optimism. You can see your future. If you can see your future, then you can build towards it, and you're naturally optimistic. If you can't see your future, that's, I think, where trouble begins.
All right, we're ending on that note. Beautiful stuff. Thank you, Yat. Until next time, open invitation. Anytime you're in London, let's do this again.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much for what you're doing. I always love watching your talks on stage. I always learn something new about life, about humanness, not to mention Web3. So thank you so much, and wishing you all the best.
Thank you.
All right, till next time. Thanks. So Jim Rickards has just recorded a video that's not available to anyone in the public, and he's going to be talking about how this upcoming recession is going to be fast, it's going to be bloody, it's going to be nasty. But at the same time, he's going to show you how you can position yourself to profit from all of this chaos. Now, we've made this video only available to our viewers. Go to londonreal.tv/Jim. Watch that immediately. I can't say enough good things about Jim Rickards. He understands the global economic system better than any guest I've ever had on London Real. His predictions are almost uncannily true, and you can learn how to profit from his vision, from his expertise, and his understanding of economics. So go to londonreal.tv/Jim or click the link below. It's an excellent, excellent look on what's going to happen in the future and how you can position yourself to profit from that. Jim is one of the best in the business, one of my favorite guests on London Real, and he's very, very good at predicting the future and showing us all to profit from it. So click the link, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, do you want to profit from crypto? Then join my DeFi Academy. The Crypto DeFi Academy will help you create generational wealth. But don't take my word for it. Listen to my students.
When I first got into crypto, I remember thinking to myself, I need to learn more. Brian Rose, learning crypto, learning DeFi, gotta do it.
I am so grateful that I jumped in and did this. I had to break through some limiting beliefs that I can do this, that I can afford this, that I can be in this.
It challenges the things that are deeply rooted within us.
Joining DeFi Academy has been one of the best decisions I have made on my blockchain journey.
This course was a life changer, a game changer, a huge eye-opener, coming from knowing practically nothing at the speed of the learning over 4 weeks was just fantastic.
The information you provided in this class was invaluable.
I feel far more confident in my next steps.
You took complex concepts and made them easier to understand.
What's different than so many other ones is it just doesn't tell you what to do. It actually makes you do it.
This is for people who are serious about becoming traders. This is the way it should be done.
I realized from this learning experience again that it is not about what you learn, but about who you learn it from.
The energy was insane. I've never experienced such incredible energy on a live call. Brian Rose, you are a legend, my friend.
It's the only thing in the market where you can get all information and learn everything what you need to know.
Everything is so clear and so well done, and I'm just forever grateful for this program.
It made me feel so much more confident about crypto than I did before.
I did not anticipate how passionate I was going to become about it.
It's also been like a big learning experience for me, not just in the crypto space, but just an overall balance of life.
What I've learned is, how to take ownership, of my life in a way that I really hadn't before.
Yeah, you can't put a price on that, really.
I would recommend it to anybody, top notch.
Excellence does not come cheap. So if you want excellence, you gotta pay for it, but it's so worth it.
Pull the trigger. That's what this course is about.
You're not going to regret it, really. It's amazing.
Thank you, Brian and team.
So what are you waiting for? Crypto is happening now. Click the link below, submit your application, and let me mentor you on how to create generational wealth and build the decentralized financial infrastructure of the future.